I'm Dr. Denise Hurd, Director of Research for the U.S. Poultry and Egg Association. Today, I will be speaking with Dr. Connie Moe and Michael Czarick, an Extension Poultry Engineer at the University of Georgia in the Department of Poultry Science, regarding a research project which they recently completed and was funded by U.S. Poultry and its foundation. Welcome, Connie and Mike, and thank you both for agreeing to speak with us today.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
So to get started, the title of your completed study is Evaluation of a Drinker System with or Without Trays on House Litter Conditions, Bird Performance, Health and Welfare. This was a very practical study to provide answers to a question that many producers surely had. Will you begin by sharing with us what initially necessitated this study?
Sure. So this really stemmed from my PhD program, which primarily I was looking into new ways to manage our litter, because with current welfare and ABF, everyone's focusing on drier litter. So the first study that really stemmed this whole litter management, dry litter, was looking at circulation fans and humidity control, which you all actually funded that project too. So it was great. So from that study, we found that if we can manage our humidity to be between 50 to 60%, because again, the great thing about the lab that we worked in at UGA is we're working with the growers. We're trying to find methods that kind of meet them in the middle. We don't want to provide methods that are too expensive for them or not practical. So that's kind of why when it came to humidity control, we looked at 50 to 60% because that's more of a reasonable range. So managing humidity, then we needed to add circulation fans. So looking at this combination, we were able to see that having air movement over the litter surface, controlling your humidity, it led to drier litter and better paw quality. But the thing was, we found that it was very effective, but it really only was effective for about the first few weeks. And then towards the end of the flock, we did start to see that litter moisture did start to become more prominent, particularly the drinker lines. And that's really what stemmed this study, was essentially it was the next step. You know, we were like, can we essentially prolong the effect of this circulation fan humidity control by attaching catch trays onto drinker lines?
Thank you. Can you also provide an overview of how the study was designed so that you could capture accurate and also realistic data?
One of the positive things about the program at UGA is our ability to do our studies out in the field. So we're on commercial broiler farms, being able to not only work alongside growers, but get their feedback as well as to what they think of our studies. So for this particular drinker study, we did it on a commercial broiler farm in Georgia, where we did it in 3 houses. The fact of doing field studies is one house is not the same as the other. And so how we accounted for that was we actually split the houses into quarter sections. So each section essentially served as an observation. So we actually alternated. One section had drinkers with cups, while the other sections had drinkers without the catch trays. And so for the study, we did this over a period of 4 flocks. And in each flock, we looked at litter moisture. We also looked at foot pad health, also bird performance, which included water usage as well as weight. And with those aspects, we were able to evaluate what are the benefits, as well as just in general, what are the differences between these 2 drinker systems and what it could do for those.
So you stated that your objectives were basically to evaluate the effect of a drinker system with or without trays on litter quality, foot pad health, and bird performance. Can you share some of your discoveries?
Sure. So right off the bat, it's pretty logical that catch trays would lead to dry litter, but the fact is, for our purpose sake, is we like to have numbers to back up, an observation or an opinion, because opinions can change. Numbers essentially can kind of prove what you believe in. And so we're able to see that catch trays did indeed lead to dry litter. It pretty much delayed the development of wet litter for, about a week or 2 versus a drinker system that didn't have catch trays. In terms of foot pad quality, we didn't really see differences per se between the 2 drinker systems. And we attribute that mostly to the fact that these birds were full house brooded. But that in itself is a whole other discussion. You know, we know that if you spread your density throughout your house, it can benefit litter quality and footpad health, which is what we feel may have explained why we didn't see large differences in footpad quality. It wasn't significant, but we did see subtle differences where drinker systems with catch trays had maybe a little less lesion development. And in terms of bird performance, we didn't see a difference in body weights. We didn't see a difference in water usage, which isn't a bad thing because it tells us that catch trays don't harm bird performance. Because I think that's the thing with growers is I don't want to put anything in my house that would be detrimental to bird weights or my performance. So in addition, we actually also looked at preference because the thing is like, okay, catch trays, but do the birds like it? And so for actually a couple flocks, we actually provide the birds the option of drinker lines with and without catch trays. And in that study, we found that birds really didn't have a preference. There were actually other factors that led to them choosing one over the other, and that came down to pressure as well as drinker height.
Thank you. So it sounds like you had lots of data that you were able to collect. What do you feel were some of the most important findings that the industry should begin to consider when making decisions on whether or not to implement catch trays?
One of the things we learned in the study that we really suspected, but it is the truth, is that one, keeping dryer litter is a whole management program. It's not just one thing. You have to control the humidity. You have to have the air movement. Maybe cups are a part of it, but the drinkers need to be managed. And you can put cups or catch trays on drinkers. That doesn't mean you're going to have dryer litter, because we've seen that in other farms where they didn't run the pressure right and the cups were just full of water and sloshing all over the place. It was wet. So everybody's looking a lot of times for that magic bullet. What is that one thing we can do? And the fact is there isn't. There's priorities. At first, you have to control humidity. You really need some air movement. We need properly managed drinkers. Having catch trays makes that management of those high flow nipples a little bit easier. So it's a series of things that each one adds on to the effect, but you got to get the basics right first. Is that we have to have, start off with dry litter. We have to maintain our humidity, get some air movement, and then keep on adding on little things to hopefully, when they're all added together, they have a substantial effect on dryer litter, which means, of course, healthier birds, better environment.
Management is definitely key. What would be the economical advantages or disadvantages of adding or not adding catch trays to nipple drinker systems?
One of the things working with growers is the things that you learn that you didn't think of. One of the interesting things is the grower found, unrelated to our research, is that, hey, the catch trays made it easier for her to adjust the drinkers on baby chicks because she had a reference point. And she loved that. She put those in there. And so it did make it easier, in her opinion, to manage her drinkers. The other things from the economic, let's say the downside, let's say the negatives. Well, sometimes the cups were knocked off and you had to put them back on. But the relative cost of the trays wasn't that high, because we had essentially the identical drinker system with or without catch trays. And now we got to go back and add probably catch trays to everything. The pluses we saw was, we had a little bit drier litter under the nipples. And that, if we expand that out, is going to mean we're going to have less ammonia. Our litter treatments will last longer. We'll probably might have to be able to ventilate a little bit less. We're going to have less of a likelihood for foot pads. It doesn't solve our foot pad problem, but hey, it's going to lower that along with the circulation fans and humidity control. And we're just going to have an overall better, healthier environment for our birds. We should have a little bit better performance and, better welfare for the birds, which of course is important.
Are there any further studies needed or in the works with you guys based off of your findings? And last question is there anything else that you would like to share regarding this project or further projects?
Well, like most research, you answer one question, you get 5 more. And every time you start doing this, you realize, well, what about this and that? And some of the things that we've been considered is where should the drinker lines go? You know, and we're real standard with a feeder and then 24 inches drinker, 24 inches drinker. And you go to almost any house, that's a very standard thing. We're sort of grouping our feed and drinkers in very narrow areas across the house. And I've noticed in some trip overseas that they more evenly space things across the width of the house, that there's a 3-foot gap between every feeder and drinker, utilizing the entire floor space. Because getting back to some of Connie's circulation fan work, we said, we get better litter when the birds were all spread out, because then they're depositing the moisture more uniformly across the width of the house. So maybe we need to explore looking at getting the drinkers more spread out, take advantage of all that real estate in a lot of middle of the houses that don't have anything going on. Spread, you know, the birds out. So, you know, drinker line placement. We're also considering looking at, okay, do we need more drinker lines with fewer nipples to spread out that load? Because we're doing some research right now, trying to document wastage. Be able to put a number on how much water the birds are wasting. And our preliminary results are showing, boy, there's a lot of water coming off that nipple that the bird doesn't drink. And it's just sort of scattered over a 2-foot area around the feeder. So, you know, that's something important, the number of nipples versus the number of lines. We're also looking at something maybe along the lines of more dynamic control of water pressure on the drinker lines, that the pressure, you know, the higher the pressure, the more wastage, the more wet litter you're going to have. It just works that way. Looking in systems that the pressure would change over the course of the day, or maybe go down to 0 at night, or we increase the pressure high during high feeding periods and then decrease it back down, making it more like temperature control, where we dial in not just a set point of drinker line pressure, but one that would change, not just over the course of the flock, but from hour to hour based on the demands of the birds. And the other thing, again, getting back to, you know, some of the work that Connie did, even in this drinker study, that we did full house brooding. So we'd have, you know, uniform chick placement throughout the flock. We're all good. And the thing we learned there is it is dramatically easier to control litter moisture in a full house brooded situation. And we've almost gone into partial house brooding over the years out of habit. So the question is, in our modern houses, totally enclosed, well insulated and all that, are the negative aspects of environmental control, the litter moisture associated with partial house brooding, do they outweigh the benefits of saving a little gas? Because I don't think we save as much gas as a lot of people think we do. So, and again, I think we're, as an industry and our research team, is going to probably look more into documenting the pluses and minuses of full house brooding when it comes to litter moisture control.
Awesome. It sounds like there's quite a bit of work that's still left out there to be done. And I know it's going to be beneficial to the industry, and we look forward to receiving that here at US Poultry. Just a reminder for our audience today that if you're interested in taking a look at the final report of this project, we do have it on the US Poultry website where you can go and download it. And this brings us to the end, and I just want to thank both of you so much for taking time out of your schedules today to share your finalized research with us. It's quite interesting, and these findings are going to be very useful for producers going forward when they're looking to make decisions whether to add catch trays or not to their drinker systems. So again, we really appreciate you taking the time, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.